Megan from the garden. It's Christina from Sunshine and Flora. So it is the very first week of August, and I thought this was the perfect time to film another garden tour for you guys. It has been a while and the garden is absolutely exploding, as you can see by my Zenia Patch. And I have also made a few changes in the garden in the form of succession plantings and added a few extra beds outside of this fenced-in area. So I want to share that with you guys too. So I think we'll start this tour right in the Zenia Patch today. Again, it is absolutely exploding. I am using so many Zenia blooms every single week. I think I planted the perfect amount for myself this year. Now, most of my Zenias are the Benary's Giants. I have every color of the rainbow. These are really prolific bloomers. They have huge blooms on them and I am absolutely loving them. The other varieties that I planted this year are the Queen Lime series, and I also planted every color that those come in. I have the Queen Lime Blush, the Queen Lime Red, the orange. The orange I think is my favorite this year because it's taking on all of those peach tones, but those have been really great bloomers as well. Now, as far as the number of zinnias that I have 4 different rows, and within those rows there are 3 to 4 rows. And so I'm guessing I have roughly 250 to 300 zinnia plants. And for me this year, that has been the perfect amount. I will probably do the exact same amount this year, unless I end up developing parking lot area into some more bed space. Then I will probably put an entire row out there as well. But that I need to wait till the fall to figure out, and once I get all of my plans made, I will make sure to share those with you guys too. So the next area that I think I'll show you is the area right around the greenhouse here, which is where most of my Rubeckia and snapdragons are planted. So we are at the front of the greenhouse now. This faces east, and so it is earlier in the morning here, and I am obviously in the direct sun. My Rubeckia are on both sides of the greenhouse, and they are really putting on a show right now. Some of them are getting a little bit of bug damage, which I've noticed is mostly the light colored ones like the Prairie Sun, but I have just been harvesting and harvesting these Rubeckia. I almost cannot keep up with them. Now I do have some singles. I have the Prairie Sun. I have a lot of this Cherry Brandy Rubeckia, and then I have a lot of the, I think it's called the Cherokee Sunset, which are the doubles, and those are my so are such a wide range of shades. All of the Rubeckia I planted are a really good stem height, and so I have pretty much been able to use everything. You can see this one is probably about 2 feet high. That's about what they're all going, which is great for my market bouquets. I've also been selling Rubeckia to Florist, which I have a florist delivery today, and she has requested Rubeckia again. But these are just a great summer flower. I think these are going to bloom solid all the way until frost. Around the sides of the greenhouse are where I have all of my snapdragons planted, and to be quite honest, I cannot believe that I am still harvesting off of these as much as I am. There are snapdragons to pick every day, which is absolutely wonderful because my florist always wants these, but I cannot believe they're still going strong with all this summer heat that we have had. Most of the snapdragons I planted this year are either the Potomac series, I do have a few Costa series, and some Rocket, and the Potomac are definitely the strongest that are still blooming. In fact, I already have my snapdragon seeds ordered for next year, so this winter I'll be sharing a video about all of the varieties that I'll be growing again next summer. So this is the spot in the garden where my Lizzie Anthes were planted, and you can see it's pretty much harvested out. I do have a few left that I will be harvesting this week. These are a little more in the shade, so they're a little farther behind, which is kind of nice because it staggers my harvest. But I just had really good luck with the Lizzie Anthes that I planted this year. In fact, I already have my seeds ordered for next year for about 4 or 5 colors of Lizzie Anthes I'm growing. I'm limiting it to a certain color palette, and again, I will share all of that either this fall or winter with you guys. But for as hard as it is to grow Lizzie Anthes, I had really great luck this year, and it's also something that my florist has ordered with all of her deliveries. So I want to make sure that I definitely have more of that for next year. And you can see behind me, my raspberries are going crazy. I have a few volunteers growing in my path. I'm just letting them go. But this fall, I'm probably going to be shaping this area up and getting some stakes out so that it does not take over this part of the garden next spring. All right, let's continue down this long bed. I have a bunch more plants to show you, along with an area that I completely replanted for some succession planting. So this is the area of the garden where I have most of my yarrow planted, and it spans this whole bed. It's all in the sun right now, so it's a little bit hard to see, but you can see this particular plant right now is absolutely covered in buds, and I have been using yarrow for at least a month and a half solid. It has been a really great addition to the cutting garden, and I plan to plant more next year to fill this bed a little more because it has just been a solid staple that I can depend on every single week. So this bed is one of the beds that I have made a few changes to. You can see that right now I have this planted with a beautiful Dusty Miller. This previously was planted with my first succession planting of Bupleurum. I have since then harvested most of this out. I wanted to make sure that I made use of the space since it was empty. So I was gifted these Dusty Miller seedlings, so I thought this would be the perfect spot to pop these in. Now these are only about 12 to 14 inches tall, but this foliage works perfect in the mason jar bouquets that I make. I just love that icy blue color for contrast. So I think I will be planting more of this next year on my own. Now in front of that is my second succession planting of Bupleurum. That is just starting to flower. I'll be able to harvest that next week. And behind me, I was also gifted some pumpkin on a stick plants. That is something that I have never grown before, but I think it will be really fun to see this fall how those develop and how I can use those. The pumpkin on a stick plant itself has little spikes on it, and so I don't think it's something that I would ever want to use in a bouquet. But I think being able to cut the little orange pumpkins off and maybe selling little bags of them at the market would be really fun for people to use in their home decor. And at the very end of this bed is my Stilby Patch. Now a couple of these were planted last fall. I have planted about 6 more plants in this area, so they're right in this whole section here. They're still pretty small, but I should be able to get blooms off of them next spring for sure. A Stilby is a plant that can grow in the shade, which this area gets mostly shade. They also like soil that stays very moist, which this area also does, and so I think I might end up planting some along the back wall here and just fill this whole area with a Stilby. Now these are some perennial grasses that I planted a couple years ago. They're starting to put on some height. I'm planning to move these this fall, and then a Stilby can go in those spots too. Then this is one of the raised beds that I used earlier this spring for ranunculus, and I'm doing a little experiment with this. I have filled this with half basil. This is a cinnamon basil. Then these seedlings are pro-cut sunflowers, and I don't know if this is going to work or not, but I'm just trying it as an experiment. I planted these about 2 to 3 inches apart, and I just want to see if for the end of fall I can get some miniature sunflowers. If they don't work, it's fine, but I want to try it as just a little experiment because these could be perfect for some little mason jar bouquets. Okay, so I'm standing at the end of my Zenia Patch, which I had some volunteer sunflowers grow. This one has not flowered yet, but it will be soon. These are pretty much done flowering. In fact, there was a whole bunch more in this area, and I recently cut a bunch of them down because the bed behind me, which I will put a picture up on the screen, this is another succession planting of sunflowers that I have planted. Some of them are about 1 foot tall, and some of them are just little seedlings right now. But I have probably about 300 sunflowers planted in this bed that I hope will be blooming just in time for my big end of the market that I'm doing on September 24th. It's the big one I did last year. If you guys saw those videos, I sold out in about 2.5 hours. This year, I need to have way more product. Last year was the first year for that event, and everyone was blown away by the attendance. In fact, multiple vendors were selling out just after lunchtime, so I was not the only one. So this year they are having triple the vendors. I have not seen any cut flower farmers besides me yet being there, so I need to make sure that I have plenty of product, and that will be probably multiple videos of me planning and getting ready for that. But anyway, I probably have roughly 300 sunflowers planted just in this space. I have more planted on the outside of my garden, which I will show you. But I am really hoping that these develop nicely and give me lots of stems for that market. Also, right at the end of this bed next to my zinnias, I have another dahlia patch. Now, I have already learned I don't think that I want this specific area of the garden formatted like this next year. The zinnias are just putting on too much height too fast compared to the dahlias, so they're shading them out a bit. So I need to do a swap and put the dahlias over on this end of the patch and the zinnias over on this end of the patch. But all those changes will be made later this fall when I'm doing my formatting, which I will do a video on, but I am already taking notes on different changes that I'm making for next year. You know, gardening is a learning process, and I will probably change things up every single year, but that's just one of the changes I'm making for this year. Now, these dahlias were pinched really late. I can see a couple blooms of the cornel coming on. We had a really cold spring, and so I again did not get them in the ground as soon as I wanted to, but they are starting to really fill out nicely, and I should have some blooms in a couple weeks, I think. Let me take you down and show you my other dahlia patch now. This is the other dahlia patch that I have going. This was pinched a couple weeks before the other one, and these shoots are just really starting to shoot up everywhere. I don't see a lot of them yet. Ooh, I see some buds on a few of those. I would think in the next couple weeks I'll be harvesting blooms off of these plants as well. This year I planted about 70 to 75 dahlia plants, and so I am really hoping September is the month for dahlias, and I am harvesting blooms like crazy off of these. I am starting to get some blooms on this plant that's planted in a galvanized tin. This is Arabian Night, and I've harvested about 4 to 5 blooms so far, and as you can see, I have a couple more ready and lots more blooms on the plant. So this is the first dahlia plant that I have been harvesting from in the garden this year. Here is a quick look at the bed that is in between my sunflowers and my dahlias. I have been harvesting from this like crazy as well. Down over here is a little patch of yarrow. This was all my feverfew, ageratum, and this whole area is all status, which I have been harvesting for both dried flower bouquets and fresh bouquets. The feverfew currently is just producing really short stems, which I'm using for my mini bouquets. The ageratum is starting to regenerate a little bit after I pretty much cleared out the bed, and the status is just going strong. I'm also starting to harvest from my Celosia bed. This bed is about 5 feet deep, 15 feet long, and in here I have a variety of different kinds of Celosia. I have a red, I think this is the terracotta, I have the flamingo, I have the Selway white, and then I have some that give those little heads on them. I think it's called the chief mix. Those are just starting to bloom. But I have a whole bucket of Celosia inside the studio right now to use for my bouquets this week. I also plan on drying a lot of the Celosia to make dried flower bouquets this fall, which I'm hoping will be a hit as well. Dried flowers seem to be very popular right now, especially that have the like the dried plumes in them. I think the flamingo feather Celosia will be perfect for that, but I'm really excited to be finally harvesting off of this. Okay, well that pretty much is everything inside the garden. I want to take you on the outside of my fence to my cottage garden area. I have been harvesting a lot from this area also, and then I want to show you 4 new raised beds that I put in out there too, that I've been harvesting from, and my first extension of sunflowers is almost harvested, and my pumpkins are growing crazy. So let me take you out there and show you all of that. So we are now outside of my fenced in area in my cottage garden area, which you can see is really filling up. One of the things that I have been using in bouquets a lot are my Echinacea. Now I have some white in the background, but in front I have these cantaloupe Echinacea. They're like the double kind that get the poofs on the top, whatever that's called. Anyway, my clients have really been liking them. I've also been selling them to a florist. These are a definite one to have in your garden. I absolutely love them. Another thing that is just starting to put on some height in the garden is my amaranth right here. There are a few blooms just starting. This is the red spike amaranth. I cannot wait to use these in fall bouquets. Here's another look at an area in the cottage garden. I have some marigolds that are really starting to bloom. I'm using those this week. The tall purple plant is a Russian sage. I don't use that in cut flowers, but that really puts on some good color for the year. And then over here, you can see I have some cosmos that are just starting to put on some height. And right in front of them is some celosia that I get every year from a garden center that I use for its red foliage that it puts on in the fall. Here's a look from the other direction in my cottage garden. You can see I have Rubeckia in there. There's some Yarrow in the front. The space right back in here that's empty, that has some new perennials planted that you actually can't see from this angle, but there's a lot of Shasta daisy in there and some more Yarrow and some phlox, the white variety called David. And the star of the show in this area, of course, is my trellis. You can see it's completely covered with mini pumpkins. These I am growing for that big fall market. This is the Titan squash tunnel from Gardener's Supply. It is going to be covered pretty soon. I cannot wait to see how this looks when the vines go over the top. All right, so this is the other area of the garden that I wanted to show you. This is a creative way of using the space that you have. So this is the parking lot behind my photography studio. Along here, I have a 96-foot bed where I have all of my pumpkins planted. You can also see that I have sunflowers planted along the back. This is my first succession planting of sunflowers. About half of them are harvested out already. Then in front, I have 4 4x4 raised beds. The front 2 are full of seedlings that I was gifted. The back 2 are mostly sunflowers. So this one has a few seedlings in it. This one is all little sunflower plants. These I also hope to have for that end of the season market. I just don't have enough space for everything that I want to grow, and so I have this huge parking lot and I thought, why not use it? Here's a look at the other end of that bed where all the pumpkins are. This is where I have harvested all of my sunflowers out, but this is all pumpkins. I have about 20 to 25 different varieties of pumpkins planted, which I did a video on, but these are growing like crazy and I cannot wait to harvest these and also take these to that end of the year market. Okay, so that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed seeing what the cut flower garden is looking like the 1st of August. I will make sure to keep you updated on when my dahlias are flowering, how my succession plants are doing, and everything else that I am doing through fall in the cut flower garden. So stay tuned. We'll see you soon.